Hello, without wasting any time, we'll start with some very important things, very crucial things rather, in the JavaScript. So we will learn what the variables are, how they are applied, what kinds of them are there, and then what is a function and how it is executed. Before we get started, I just want to say that we are using an HTML file in which we have a script tag. And in the script tag, you have your JavaScript. So basically what you can do with this file is simply double click on it usually, and it will launch on the browser. So it will launch on a browser, and I will later show you how you can access the console. We don't have a user interface yet. We aren't getting into that element accessing thing yet. Okay, so we will be looking a bit at the console. Now, getting started with it, we first of all have some variables. In this example, we have 3 of them declared. The first one being test variable 1, and that, as you can see, is a text, or in other words, a string. Okay, now JavaScript doesn't really have any specific kind of variable declaration. You have this var thing, okay, var. Now that is a variable. There are some other options which we will later explore, but this is the main thing that you will be using. So basically one declaration for all the types. Having said that, the types of variables do exist and some errors may occur. Okay, so this is very important to remember. Now, if we get to the second one, we have a number. Okay, so that's gonna be an integer in this case. Okay. It might be a decimal number, some other kind of a number as well, okay? But in this case, we have a little integer, and that is a number. A number would be a different type from a string. However, it is declared the same way, as you can see. And finally, we of course have a Boolean value. So that's either true or false. And as you can see, once again, it is declared in the same kind of a fashion. Okay, so we can now get to the test function 1. Okay, test function 1, as you can see, we have 2 parameters. Okay, 2 parameters. We can call them that. We can call them arguments. They should be, for a function, they should be arguments, but again, whichever word you prefer, it really doesn't matter. It works the same way as in other languages. Some may call it a method, some may call it a function. Generally speaking, when you're doing something simple, you don't really worry about those names. It's the same exact thing. So basically we have a declaration of a function, we have function, then the name for the function, and then in the parentheses we have the parameters, the arguments for the function. In this case we have A, and then we have B, and as you can see we return to the normal flow or to the previous flow with an answer of A plus B. But as you can see, there is no type declaration for a return. There is no void, there is no integer, nothing like that as you may see in other programming languages. So you can simply return it or not return. It will return itself without any kind of a data, sort of a void return as you might see in other languages, and you would have to declare it. In this case, you don't have to declare anything, you simply return, and if you return something useful, you can assign it to something. Okay, if you don't, you don't, but in this case, since we do return, we do assign it to a new variable. As you can see, variable new value 1. New value 1 equals test function 1, and this is how the execution works. Now, you may also see that there will be a bit of a problem, because we're trying to add test variable 1, which is a string, to test variable 2, which is a number. Okay, and then we have test function 2. Test function 2, as you can see, does something a bit different. Test function 2 gets executed as test function 2, and as you can see, it takes test variable 1, and test variable 2, which is once again the same combination, a string and an integer. But for the first one, you see we have it wrapped in a number function, a native software function. And what that does, it turns a string into a number. Okay, so you can avoid lots of problems by invoking this thing. And you do have to be careful about these things, as they will cause some major errors and it will be quite troublesome sometimes to figure it all out. Now, if you want to print something to the console, well, it may be a value for your training exercises when you're playing around with some code, or it may be an error. You might want to print an error. You might have a library and you want to print an error. So this is what you do. In the bottom, as you can see, we have console.log, okay? So from console comes this log function. And it's basically like write line, print line in other languages. It simply prints into the console. The console is on the browser, and now we will take a look at how this whole thing works. Now the program has been launched, and these are the returns as you see them. So for the first function we have printed, remember it was a plus b with no conversion of a variable type, and you can see we have 100, 100. It is not a number. In this console you may notice a number is in this blue color and a string would be in a black. So we have 100 and 100. So basically what happened, two strings were added together. So you can now guess that by default, if you have a string and a number added together, one will be converted to string rather than the string to the number. So that is why we have 100 and 100. After that, we have 200, which seems to work, right? We had 100 plus 100, that is 200. And as you can see, the conversion worked perfectly. So these are the crucial points of JavaScript: the variables, the methods, or in this case functions. Again, whichever language is yours, you may confuse them, but these are the same things. And with that, we will conclude this lecture.